Okay, so what if you could win pretty much any argument or turn someone who doesn't like you into an ally? What if you could get people to enthusiastically do what you want? Well, that's basically the promise of Dale Carnegie's legendary book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. In this explainer, we're going to break down the absolute core secrets from this classic and show you why they are, honestly, more important now than ever.
To really get the first and maybe the most important principle, we have to start with a story of some serious political drama. So, after leaving the White House, Theodore Roosevelt, he handpicked William Howard Taft to be his successor. But when Roosevelt got back from a safari in Africa, he was absolutely livid about Taft's conservative policy.
So Roosevelt didn't hold back. He launched this full-scale public attack, even started his own political party to run against Taft. And the result? It was a disaster. He split the Republican vote, and they basically handed the election to their opponent. But here's the key question. Did all that fierce criticism actually change Taft's mind? Nope, not one bit. It just made Taft super defensive, tearfully insisting he hadn't done anything wrong. All that criticism really accomplished was creating this deep, bitter resentment.
And this story just perfectly illustrates the first big secret of dealing with people. Criticism is futile. It just doesn't work. It doesn't create any lasting change. It just puts people on the defensive, right? It wounds their pride and makes them want to justify themselves, not change what they're doing.
Carnegie points out that this is basically a fundamental law of human nature. 99 times out of 100, people just don't blame themselves, no matter how wrong they might be. Even the most notorious criminals, when they're finally caught, they'll blame anyone but themselves. So if criticism is a dead end, then what actually works?
Well, this leads us right into the second key principle. To influence people, you've got to stop focusing on what they're doing wrong and start focusing on what they truly want. Carnegie argued that there's this one single, incredibly powerful human drive that unlocks everything.
And that drive, it's the desire to feel important. And this isn't just a small thing, like a passing thought. Carnegie calls it a gnawing and unfaltering human hunger. It's what separates us from animals. It's what drives civilization. And it is the absolute key to influencing people.
Carnegie tells this really simple story from his childhood, back on a farm in Missouri. See, his family used to raise these prize-winning hogs and cattle, and they'd collect all these blue ribbons from county fairs. But you know what? The hogs couldn't have cared less about the awards they won.
But his father? Oh, his father cared. He cared a lot. Those ribbons were proof of his skill, of his hard work. They gave him that feeling of importance. And it's the exact same feeling that drove a poor grocery clerk named Abraham Lincoln to study law, or that pushed John D. Rockefeller to build a massive empire. So here's the takeaway. If you can satisfy this deep human craving, you can get people to do incredible things.
So how do you actually do it? Well, the number one way is through honest, sincere appreciation. But, and this is a really big but, you have to understand the difference between real appreciation and just cheap flattery.
Carnegie draws a really sharp line in the sand here. Appreciation, he says, comes from the heart. It's genuine. Flattery, on the other hand, is selfish praise that comes from the teeth out. And people are smart. We can spot insincerity a mile away, right? One is a powerful way to connect. The other just feels phony and gets dismissed instantly.
So, if we know genuine appreciation works, what are people most interested in hearing about? What's the one topic that always gets their attention? Well, there was this fascinating study by the New York Telephone Company that gives us a huge clue. They analyzed 500 phone calls to find the most frequently used word, and it showed up.
The word was I. Yep, the personal pronoun I. People are just fundamentally interested in themselves, morning, noon, and night. And look, that's not a criticism, it's just a fact of human nature. And once you really get that, you realize that showing genuine interest in them is one of the most powerful things you can possibly do.
And what is the absolute simplest, most direct way to show someone you see them as an individual? Use their name. It seems so small, doesn't it? But Carnegie says a person's name is, to them, the sweetest and most important sound in any language. It's a signal of recognition. It tells them they matter.
There's this amazing story from one of Carnegie's students. He went to this cafeteria where the woman making sandwiches, her name was Eunice, and she was clearly just miserable, scowling at everyone. The first day, he gets this sad little sandwich, but the next day he sees her name tag. He smiles and just says, "Hello, Eunice." And the result was like magic. That one tiny act of recognition completely changed everything. She forgot the scale, piled on the ham. It was incredible.
Okay, so we know not to criticize, and we know to show appreciation. But what happens when you actually genuinely disagree with someone? I mean, how are you supposed to handle conflict?
It's a question we all run into, right? You're in some heated discussion, you know you're right, and you really want to win. So what's the best way to do it?
The answer is probably not what you think. Avoid it. Carnegie argues that you can't really win an argument. Think about it. If you lose, well, you lose. But even if you win, you've just made the other person feel inferior, you've hurt their pride, you might have won the point, but you've totally lost their goodwill. So in the end, you've still lost.
So instead of digging in your heels, Carnegie suggests this completely different path. First, welcome the disagreement. Don't see it as a fight. See it as a chance to get a new perspective. Then, just listen, like really listen. Try to find any area of agreement, no matter how small it seems. And finally, honestly promise to think about their ideas. This approach just completely diffuses the tension and turns a battle into a partnership.
You know, Carnegie learned this one the hard way. He was at a dinner party, and he publicly corrected a guy who messed up a quote. His friend, Frank, kicked him under the table and later said to him, "Why prove to a man he is wrong? He didn't ask for your opinion. Why not let him save his face?" That's such a powerful question to ask yourself whenever you're in a disagreement.
And this brings us to the final big idea that really ties everything together. If you want to change other people's behavior, your coworker, your partner, your kids, the most effective place to start is with yourself.
Just look at this incredible example of leadership. After the absolute catastrophic failure of Pickett's charge at Gettysburg, General Lee had every reason in the world to blame his subordinates. But he didn't. As his defeated, broken troops came back, he rode out to meet them and took full, complete responsibility. It was an act of just immense character.
And this is the real core of this whole philosophy. It's a fundamental shift in your focus. Instead of trying to fix and regulate and improve everybody else, turn that lens inward. Admitting your own mistakes first makes it infinitely easier for other people to actually hear what you have to say. And like Carnegie says, it's just way more profitable. So as we wrap this up, I'll leave you with a little challenge. Think about your week ahead. I want you to identify just one difficult conversation, one potential argument, or one person you need to influence. And then ask yourself this: how might the outcome change if you stopped trying to win and you started by sincerely trying to satisfy their deep human desire to feel important?